In the heart of a small town, an orange tabby named Oliver was more than just a pet, he was family. Emily had grown up with him by her side since she was a child. From the time he was a kitten, Oliver had always been curious, exploring every corner of their backyard and watching the outside world with his bright green eyes. He had an adventurous spirit, but no matter how far he wandered, he always returned home by sunset, curling up in Emily's lap while she read a book or watched TV. To her, Oliver wasn't just a cat, he was a friend, a confidant, a living piece of her story. But one summer afternoon, everything changed. The back door was left slightly open, and Oliver, driven by his restless nature, slipped outside for what should have been a routine adventure. Only this time he never came back. That night, Emily called for him endlessly, shaking his food bowl, waiting to hear the familiar sound of his paws rushing toward her. Hours passed, then days. She posted flyers, knocked on neighbors' doors, and searched every alley and backyard in the neighborhood. But Oliver was gone. As weeks turned into months, hope slowly faded. The once lively home felt emptier without the soft jingle of Oliver's collar or the warmth of him curled up at the foot of Emily's bed. Life moved on, but the loss lingered like a shadow. Every time Emily saw an orange cat in the distance, her heart skipped a beat, only to be crushed by disappointment. Eventually, she stopped looking, telling herself that Oliver was gone for good. But some bonds are stronger than time, and some stories are far from over. Years passed, and though life moved on, a part of Emily never truly let go of Oliver. She finished school, moved into her own apartment, and even adopted another cat, a gray tabby named Milo. But deep inside, the memory of Oliver lingered like an unfinished chapter. Sometimes she wondered where he had gone. Had someone taken him in? Had he survived on his own? These questions haunted her, but with no answers, all she could do was hope. 10 years to the day after Oliver had vanished, Emily was visiting her parents in her childhood home. It felt familiar, yet different, filled with memories of a life she had left behind. She sat on the porch, reminiscing, when something caught her attention. A scrawny, orange cat was standing near the old oak tree in the yard. His fur was dull, his body thin, and yet something about him felt eerily familiar. Her heart pounded as she slowly stood up, not wanting to scare the cat away. "Oliver," she whispered, almost afraid to say the name out loud. The cat's ears twitched, but he didn't run. Instead, he stared at her with deep green eyes, eyes that mirrored the ones she had memorized long ago. The world around her seemed to freeze. Could it really be him? After all these years? Emily knelt, extending her hand, but the cat remained cautious. She could see the years had not been kind to him. His tail was crooked, a scar ran along his ear, and his once vibrant coat was patchy. He had the look of a survivor, a fighter. But in those tired eyes, there was something else, recognition. As if some distant part of him remembered her, too. She didn't want to overwhelm him, so she stayed still, speaking softly. "It's me, Oliver. I never stopped looking for you." Slowly, step by step, the cat edged closer, until he was just within reach. Emily held her breath. Then, finally, in a moment she had longed for but never dared to expect, Oliver rubbed his head against her hand. A flood of emotions hit her all at once: shock, joy, disbelief. After a decade of wondering, after years of thinking he was gone forever, Oliver had found his way home. Emily could hardly believe what was happening. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now that it was real, it felt surreal. She gently ran her fingers through Oliver's fur, feeling the roughness that years of survival had left behind. He was thinner than she remembered, his once plush coat now dull and matted. Yet, despite the wear of time, he still had the same soul, the same quiet strength. He purred softly, a sound so faint that she almost didn't hear it at first. But it was there, proof that deep inside, he remembered her too. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she continued stroking him, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to scoop him up and never let go, but she knew she had to be patient. 10 years had passed. He had lived an entirely different life, one she could only imagine. Where had he been? How had he survived? Questions swirled in her mind, but none of them mattered as much as the simple fact that he was here, right in front of her. After everything, fate had brought them back together. Oliver remained hesitant, his body language a mix of familiarity and uncertainty. He allowed Emily's touch, but kept his muscles tense, ready to flee at any sudden movement. She understood. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt in an instant. He had lived too long in survival mode, and part of him was still afraid that this moment wasn't real. Emily knew she had to take things slow, to let him decide if he was ready to stay. And so, she just sat with him, whispering soft reassurances, giving him the space to choose. Minutes passed, then an hour. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light over them. Oliver's tail flicked slightly, his ears twitching at the sounds of the neighborhood. But he didn't leave. Instead, he curled up beside her, resting his tired body against her leg. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. This was it, the first step towards something she had never dared to hope for. Oliver had come back, and now it was up to her to show him that he was still home. That night, Emily prepared a soft blanket on the porch and placed a bowl of food nearby. Oliver ate cautiously, his movements slow and deliberate, as if unsure if this kindness was meant for him. But as the stars filled the sky, he stayed. Emily watched him from the doorway, a quiet smile on her lips. No matter how long it took, she would wait. She had lost him once, but now she had a second chance. And she wasn't going to let him slip away again. As the days passed, Oliver remained cautious, as if caught between two worlds, the harsh life he had known for years and the warmth of a home he had once belonged to. Emily gave him space, letting him decide how much he wanted to trust again. At first, he stayed outside, curling up in the same spot on the porch every night. She left food and fresh water for him, sitting nearby as he ate, speaking to him in the same gentle voice she had used when he was a kitten. It was a slow process, but little by little, the invisible wall between them began to crack. One evening, as a storm rolled in, Emily found Oliver sitting by the door, his fur damp from a light drizzle. She opened it just enough for him to come inside, but he hesitated, looking past her, as if weighing his decision. The sound of thunder rumbled in the distance, and for a moment, Emily thought he would turn and disappear into the night. But then, to her surprise, he stepped inside. Cautiously, warily, but willingly. Emily held her breath as he scanned the room, his eyes landing on familiar things, a couch he used to nap on, a rug he once clawed at playfully. The memories were still there, buried under years of struggle. That first night indoors was tense. Oliver didn't wander far, choosing to settle in a corner where he could see the door, ready to leave if he needed to. Emily let him be, resisting the urge to scoop him into her arms. Instead, she simply sat nearby, giving him the comfort of her presence without demanding anything in return. Hours passed, and at some point, exhaustion won over his instincts. He closed his eyes and finally allowed himself to sleep. It wasn't the deep, relaxed sleep of a pet who felt safe, but was a start. The following days were filled with small but meaningful victories. Oliver began moving around more, exploring the house at his own pace. He still flinched at sudden noises, and sometimes he would stare out the window as if debating whether he truly belonged here. Emily understood. A decade of survival doesn't just fade overnight. There were moments when he seemed torn, standing by the door as if contemplating leaving again. But each time he chose to stay. It wasn't until a week later that Emily finally saw a glimpse of the old Oliver. She had been reading on the couch when she felt a familiar weight beside her. He had jumped up, cautiously at first, before curling into a small ball near her feet. She didn't move, afraid to break the moment. And then, after a long pause, she heard it, a deep, steady purr. It was the first time in years that he had truly relaxed in her presence. And at that moment she knew Oliver was home. Even though Oliver had returned, the scars of his lost years lingered. Some were visible, the healed-over wounds on his ears, the slight limp in his back leg, but others ran deeper, etched into his very being. He startled easily, his body tensing at the sound of a door creaking or footsteps approaching too quickly. Nights were the hardest. He would often wake up suddenly, eyes wide and alert, as if expecting danger. Emily watched him with quiet understanding, knowing that some wounds take more than love to heal. One evening, she found him staring at his own reflection in the window. His tail twitched, His ears flattened slightly, and for a moment he looked more like a stray than the cat she had once known. She approached slowly, kneeling beside him. "You're safe now," she whispered, running a hand gently down his back. His muscles remained tight for a second before he let out a slow breath, leaning into her touch. It was a reminder that trust wasn't something given, it was something rebuilt, piece by piece. Determined to help him feel secure again, Emily made small changes to the house. She left a night light on so he wouldn't wake up in complete darkness. She placed soft blankets in his favorite spots, giving him little havens of warmth. She even set up a cozy corner by the window so he could watch the outside world from a place of safety rather than survival. It wasn't much, but over time, Oliver's posture softened. His tail, once carried low in uncertainty, began to lift again. The real breakthrough came one afternoon when Emily was preparing his food. She heard a soft thud behind her and turned to see Oliver sitting near his old food bowl, waiting. Not just eating from a safe distance, not just taking what was offered, but waiting, like he used to, with a quiet confidence that said he knew he belonged here. Emily blinked back tears as she set the bowl down. "You're really back, aren't you?" she murmured. And this time, she wasn't just hoping, she knew. That night, as she sat on the couch, Oliver did something he hadn't done in over a decade. He climbed onto her lap, stretched out, and rested his head against her. Emily didn't move, barely daring to breathe, as she felt his warmth against her. And then the deepest sound of all, the rhythmic, comforting rumble of a purr so steady it could have been a lullaby. For the first time in 10 years, Oliver wasn't just surviving. He was home. As Oliver settled back into his old life, Emily couldn't shake the question that had haunted her since the moment he returned. Where had he been all these years? The idea of him braving the world alone for a decade felt unbearable. Had he been lost the entire time, or had someone else taken him in? Had he struggled every day to survive, or had there been moments of warmth and safety? She knew he couldn't answer her, but she longed for even the smallest clue about the life he had lived. One day, curiosity got the best of her. She decided to post Oliver's story online, hoping that someone, somewhere, might recognize him. She shared pictures of him, both from before he disappeared and now, explaining how he had miraculously found his way home. Within hours, the post exploded with comments, some from people who had lost pets themselves, others simply moved by the incredible reunion. But then, a message appeared that made Emily's heart race. A woman named Margaret claimed she had cared for a cat that looked exactly like Oliver for several years. She lived in a town nearly 20 miles away, far beyond what Emily had thought possible for him to travel. Margaret explained that the cat had appeared one winter, thin and injured, and she had done her best to take care of him. He never fully trusted her, always staying at a distance, but he kept coming back for food and shelter. Then, about 2 years ago, he disappeared again. She had assumed the worst. Emily's hands trembled as she read the message. If this was truly Oliver, it meant he had endured more than she could have imagined. He had found kindness along the way, but he had also kept moving, never truly staying in one place. Had he been searching for something all along? Had he been trying to find his way back to her this entire time? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She sent Margaret more photos, and when Margaret confirmed that it was undoubtedly him, Emily felt a strange mix of gratitude and sorrow. That night, Emily sat beside Oliver as he curled up in his favorite spot. She gently ran her fingers through his fur, her heart aching at the thought of everything he had been through. "You never gave up, did you?" she whispered. "You found your way back home." Oliver didn't react, but the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing told her everything she needed to know. He had been on a long, difficult journey, one filled with struggle, kindness, and perseverance. And yet, after 10 years, he had made it. As Emily looked down at the cat who had defied the odds, she realized something. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a testament to the unbreakable bond between them. A bond that had survived time, distance, and hardship. Oliver had always been hers. And no matter where life had taken him, he had never truly stopped being hers. Oliver had returned home, but the years had left their mark on him. His once sleek fur had patches of gray, and though he still moved with the silent grace of a hunter, Emily could see the stiffness in his joints. He was no longer the spry young cat who once darted through the house, chasing dust particles in the afternoon light. Age had crept up on him in ways neither of them could ignore. Emily decided to take him to the vet for a full checkup. As they sat in the waiting room, Oliver pressed his body close to hers, his ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound. He had faced the wild for years, but this sterile, clinical space unsettled him in a way that even a thunderstorm never had. She stroked his head gently, whispering reassurances he didn't quite believe. When the vet finally examined him, Emily braced herself for what she already suspected. The news was both expected and bittersweet. Oliver was, all things considered, remarkably healthy for a cat who had lived on the streets for so long. His scars told a story of resilience, and his body, though worn, still carried the strength of a survivor. But he was also an old cat now. Arthritis had begun to settle in his bones, and his kidneys showed early signs of wear. It wasn't a death sentence, but it was a reminder that time was no longer on their side. Determined to give him the comfort he had been denied for so long, Emily made adjustments at home. She bought him a heated bed to soothe his aching joints and placed steps by the couch so he wouldn't have to jump too high. She changed his diet, giving him special food that would be easier on his kidneys. Every little thing she did was a silent promise. She would make the rest of his years the best they could be. And Oliver, in his own quiet way, seemed to understand. He no longer lingered by the door, as if debating whether to leave. He spent more time close to Emily, curling up beside her whenever she sat down. His body might have been worn by time, but his spirit was at peace. He had fought for so long, endured so much, but now, finally, he could rest. And this time, he knew he would never have to fight alone again. As the days passed, Oliver settled fully into his second chance at life. He no longer flinched at sudden movements, and the wary glances over his shoulder grew less frequent. Instead, he embraced the warmth of home, curling up on Emily's lap without hesitation, rubbing his face against her hand as if reclaiming what was always his. It was as though he had finally accepted that he was safe, that the years of struggle were behind him. One afternoon, as Emily worked at her desk, she felt a familiar weight land gently on her lap. Oliver stretched out, his eyes half-lidded with contentment, his purring deep and steady. Emily smiled, setting her work aside to scratch behind his ears. "You really are home for good, aren't you?" she murmured. His only response was a soft, satisfied sigh. He had spent a decade lost, wandering through places he never truly belonged. But here, in this quiet moment, there was no doubt he was exactly where he was meant to be. The change in him was undeniable. He no longer feared the night, no longer slept in tense, restless fits. When he napped, it was with his body fully stretched out, completely relaxed, as if finally allowing himself to trust that nothing would take this peace away from him. Emily often found herself watching him, marveling at the quiet resilience of this creature who had endured so much, yet still had the capacity to love. Their bond deepened in ways neither of them could have predicted. It was in the way Oliver always seemed to know when Emily needed comfort, pressing his warm body against her whenever she felt overwhelmed. It was in the way she instinctively reached for him, finding solace in his steady presence. They had been separated by time and distance, but their connection had never truly broken. If anything, it had only grown stronger. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat by the window, Oliver nestled beside her. She ran her fingers through his fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. "You're a miracle, you know that," she whispered. Oliver didn't move, but his purring deepened, as if acknowledging the truth in her words. He had survived the impossible, defied the odds, and found his way back. And in doing so, he had reminded Emily of something she had almost forgotten. Love, no matter how much time passes, never truly fades. Oliver's days became filled with warmth, comfort, and a kind of peace he had never known in the years he was lost. No longer did he wake up to the cold pavement beneath him or the distant hum of passing cars. Now his mornings were spent basking in the soft sunlight streaming through the windows, stretching lazily on the couch as if he had never been anywhere else. Emily often watched him with a quiet sense of wonder, still amazed that he had come back to her after all these years. She made sure his days were filled with love. She bought him the softest blankets, placed little treats around the house for him to find, and spoke to him constantly, telling him stories as if he could understand every word. And maybe he did, because every time she spoke, he looked up at her with those deep, knowing eyes, the same eyes that had recognized her after a decade apart. Their connection was something that defied logic, something beyond words. But even as Oliver embraced the comfort home, Emily knew he had his scars. There were nights when he would wake suddenly, his ears twitching, his body tense as if expecting danger. Some instincts, it seemed, never fully faded. Emily would reach out, running a gentle hand along his back, whispering, "You're safe now." Slowly, he would settle, his body relaxing again under her touch. The past had left its mark, but love was helping to soften its edges. Neighbors who remembered Oliver from before his disappearance were in awe of his return. Many had assumed he was gone forever, another stray, lost to the world. Some even stopped by to visit, marveling at the cat who had defied time and distance to find his way back. "He must really love you," one of them remarked, shaking their head in disbelief. Emily only smiled, glancing down at the cat curled up beside her. Love, it seemed, had always been at the heart of his journey. As weeks turned into months, Emily knew one thing for certain: Oliver would never have to fight for survival again. The days of hunger, of loneliness, of endless wandering were behind him. He had found his way home, and now he could simply live. He could rest without fear, love without hesitation, and enjoy every moment as a cat who had finally, after so many years, found the life he deserved. As Oliver settled into his new reality, the weight of the past seemed to fade, replaced by an unshakable sense of belonging. He no longer flinched at loud noises, nor did he wake with a start, eyes darting toward the door as if expecting to be thrust back into the unknown. He had surrendered to the certainty of Emily's presence, curling up beside her each night, without fear of being left behind again. It was as if he understood he wasn't just passing through this time. He was home. Emily found herself cherishing every little moment with him, as if making up for the lost years. The way he stretched out in the sun, his paws twitching in dreams. The way he purred so deeply it felt like a lullaby, filling the quiet of the house with a steady rhythm of peace. Every habit, every tiny expression, she committed to memory, knowing that time was no longer infinite. But instead of dwelling on the years they had lost, she focused on the time they still had left. One evening, as she sat on the couch, Oliver leaped onto her lap with surprising ease for his age. He kneaded the soft fabric of her sweater, a habit he had as a kitten, a silent sign of trust. Emily laughed softly, stroking his fur. "You're still my baby, huh?" she murmured. Oliver pressed his head into her hand, closing his eyes. Some things, it seemed, never changed. No matter how many years had passed, no matter the hardships endured, the bond between them had remained untouched. People often said that cats weren't loyal, that they could live just as happily with any home that provided them food. But Oliver had proven them wrong. He had spent a decade wandering a world that should have swallowed him whole, yet he had never forgotten where he belonged. He had fought against time, distance, and the uncertainty of survival, not for shelter, not for comfort, but for love. His return had been more than a miracle. It had been a testament to the power of an unbreakable bond. As Emily held Oliver close, feeling his warmth seep into her skin, she realized something profound. Love, real love, isn't bound by time. It doesn't fade, doesn't break, doesn't surrender to circumstance. It lingers, waiting patiently, guiding souls back to where they're meant to be. Oliver had found his way home not by chance, but by something far stronger, by a love that even 10 years apart couldn't erase. Life with Oliver became a series of quiet, precious moments, ones that Emily cherished more than she ever had before. Mornings were now spent with him curled up by her feet as she sipped her coffee, his tail flicking lazily, as if to say he was exactly where he wanted to be. Afternoons meant sunbathing by the window, his old but contented body stretched out in the warmth, his soft purrs blending with the rustling of the trees outside. And nights were her favorite. That was when he would find his way onto her pillow, pressing his tiny body against hers, as if making sure she was still there. Each day, she marveled at how he had transformed. The cat who had once been lost, hardened by years of survival, was now one who sought out love without hesitation. He greeted her at the door when she came home, rubbed his head against her cheek whenever she was sad, and let out small, delighted chirps whenever she opened a can of his favorite food. He had been a fighter, a survivor, but now, at last, he was simply a beloved pet again. Emily often wondered what stories Oliver carried with him from the years they had spent apart. Had he found kindness in the hands of strangers? Had he slept under the glow of neon city lights, or hidden among the towering trees of some distant forest? Whatever his journey had been, it had shaped him, left invisible imprints on his soul. And yet, despite all he had endured, he had chosen to return. To her, it was a truth that never failed to make her eyes well up with gratitude. People told her she was lucky, that it was rare for a pet to find its way home after so long. But she believed luck had nothing to do with it. Oliver had never truly been lost. He had just been making his way back, one uncertain step at a time. The world had changed around them, time had moved forward, and yet their bond had remained untouched. Some things were simply meant to be. And so, as she sat with him curled in her lap one evening, her fingers tracing gentle circles along his fur, she whispered the words she had said to him countless times since his return. "You're home now, Oliver, and you always will be." His only response was a slow, sleepy blink as if to say, "I know," because deep down, in a way beyond words, he had always known. As the seasons changed, so did Oliver. The years of hardship had left their mark, and though he had found his way home, time was catching up with him. His movements became slower, his naps stretched longer, and the once playful leaps onto Emily's lap turned into careful, deliberate steps. She noticed the small changes, how he sought her warmth more often, how his purrs became softer yet just as steady. She cherished every moment, knowing that their time together was more precious than ever. There were days when he seemed just like his old self, trotting over to her with a bright gaze, nudging her hand for attention. On those days, Emily allowed herself to believe they had all the time in the world. But deep down, she knew better. Oliver had been a miracle once, defying the odds to find his way back. But no miracle could last forever. The thought of losing him was unbearable, yet she promised herself one thing: he would never feel alone again. One cold winter evening, Oliver curled up in Emily's arms as they sat by the fireplace. The room was filled with warmth, the gentle crackling of flames, and the quiet hum of peace. His breathing was slow, steady, and as she ran her fingers through his fur, she whispered, "You're safe, my love. You're home." He let out a small sigh. His body relaxed against hers. And in that moment, she felt it, that quiet understanding between them, the unspoken gratitude, the love that had transcended time and distance. Oliver passed away peacefully in his sleep that night, wrapped in the warmth of the home he had fought so hard to return to. There was no fear, no loneliness, only the comfort of a life well lived and a love that had never wavered. Emily grieved, but through her sorrow, she found solace in knowing that he had not only come back to her, but that he had spent his final days surrounded by love, exactly where he belonged. Though he was gone, his presence never truly faded. She still felt him in the quiet moments, in the sunbeams that stretched across the floor, in the soft rustle of the blankets where he used to sleep, in the warmth of every memory they had shared. Love like theirs didn't end. It lived on in the spaces between time, in the hearts that refused to forget. And so, as Emily looked out into the world, she smiled softly, knowing one thing for certain: Oliver was finally home, and he always would be.